One of the more difficult eating disorders to identify as a clinician and even as an individual is orthorexia. Orthorexia is essentially the intense obsessive desire to only eat clean, only eat very, very, very healthy. Now, what's wrong with eating healthy? Absolutely nothing, but everything in moderation. With orthorexia, individuals will actually become very obsessed with certain types of nutrition, certain food stylings, maybe even like different brands of things because only this brand is the good one and everything else will, make me very ill, things of that nature. So with orthorexia, sometimes the individual will actually end up restricting other parts of their nutritional requirements in order to hyperfixate on the one thing that they believe is the healthiest thing. And of course, with all of the trending nutritional information out there, it's very difficult for anyone to know what is the best thing for each individual. And so an orthorexic will become hyper obsessed and often wind up jumping from one idea to another idea to another idea, or even developing curious aversions to things that normally would have been very fine for them. For instance, an individual with orthorexia who's leading a very healthy, well-balanced diet with lots of good proteins and lots of the proper starches and the appropriate amounts of carbohydrates and sugars might suddenly decide that one thing is especially bad for them. For instance, they might decide that because fruit has natural sugar in it, that all sugars are bad. Again, it's the all or nothing thinking there. And so they'll decide to stop eating all fruits whatsoever because fruits are going to make them fat. Or fruits are now nothing but sugar and therefore bad for you, despite the fact that, there's tons of information out there saying the opposite of that. And orthorexia can be confused for a lot of other things. It can be confused with anorexia. It can be confused with ARFID. It can be confused with tons of other different disorders, or even obsessions with personal fitness and health. And of course, because the individual is eating clean, the individual is eating very, very restricted, very hyper fixated on nutrients or one specific aspect of the nutritional calendar, so to speak, it will appear from an outside viewpoint that the person is actually really, really focused on taking care of themselves, when in fact they can actually be doing themselves a great deal of harm, partially because they will often end up denying themselves certain nutrients because they become hyper obsessed on one area, or they will also develop an intense sense of shame and self-punishment should they accidentally or unintentionally in some way ingest something that is not within the very rigid type paradigm that they have maintained for themselves. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, when we think about any kind of disorder like that, I'm always brought back to the words of the Buddha. And he said, everything in moderation, baby. Otherwise shit gets fucky. I might be paraphrasing, but he said something like that.